Hey everyone, it is late at night and I am Norman, and it is time once again for some watch news. First up, I have an article that I found on Robb Report. And this is a write-up of the sad state of affairs when it comes to the Rolex Daytona. So as most of you know, you can't simply walk in and purchase a Rolex, especially a Daytona. You have to get on a list, and maybe the AD will actually consider you. And a lot of these lists are not insignificant. So in this article, the author mentions something that occurred in 2020. Back in May 2020, our esteemed colleague, Lucy Alexander, wrote an article for Robb Report entitled, "How to Get Your Hands on the Elusive Rolex Daytona." At that time, Lucy went into a Manhattan Rolex authorized dealership and was told two things that you'll never hear today. First, she was told she'd have to wait a bit for a Daytona, and secondly, she could walk out with a two-tone Submariner right then and there. Yeah, not anymore. And this is only 4 years ago. So now 4 years later, a Rolex AD will not sell you anything brand new. Even the OPs, when I put my name on a list for one of those, I believe it was merely a couple years earlier, you could walk in and actually purchase one. But after they came out with the colorful dial ways, then the wait list grew, exploded. The author goes on to explain the state of things today. At 3 of the boutiques where I inquired about getting a Daytona, the salesperson quickly made it clear that I would not be able to get one. Each of them said they would register my interest, however. This phrase is now ubiquitous in the esoteric subculture of Rolex retail shopping. Confusingly, registering your interest has nothing to do with getting on the actual wait list. That would require a request, which means you'll be entered into the registry. One of the salespeople went out of her way to make this distinction crystal clear, noting that registering my interest was not a request, it was just registering my interest. And this part's pretty humorous, because the author asked, what would be the point of registering my interest then? And this answer is so great. Well, we would take your name and number, and then we would know that you were interested. What? So understandably, the author was really confused at this point, and he asked her, how many people have bothered to register their interest? She told me that between 50 and 100 people register their interest in the Daytona every day. Taking the mid-range estimate of 75 inquiries per day, that's 27,375 people registering their interest per year at just one Rolex AD. Millenary Watches reported in 2022 that Rolex operated 1,816 retail sites globally, bringing a conservative estimate to something like 30 to 40 million Daytona inquiries per year globally. And then the author says, that's a lot of names and numbers to write down for no apparent reason. The author continues, at one boutique, I got an actual specific answer on the wait time. A handsome and tall woman with brown hair and a licorice voice told me that the wait for a Daytona would be probably around 15 years. And when the author asked if 15 was correct, she said probably longer. Then the author went to a boutique that doesn't sell Rolex, but their other stores do, and got some truth from one of the salespeople there. I asked if the saleswoman thought I might be able to get a Rolex Daytona at one of their other locations, and she laid out what seemed like the plain truth. Honestly, you need to buy other things in order to be considered. I mean, most of us knew that already, but it's refreshing hearing them actually admit it. The author asked, would I need to buy other Rolexes? Rolex, no. You could buy an Omega and then maybe a Cartier, and then you would maybe be considered for a Rolex. Some of the Rolexes have become easier to get lately, but not the Daytona. Then the author goes on to remind us of how Rolex has rolled out its own certified pre-owned system. And yeah, maybe it's conspiracy. But yeah, trying to get on a list in the first place, and then when you do, it's 15 years. Meanwhile, celebrities seem to be able to get them easy enough. But I have a video coming up. The situation with some other brands is far worse than this even. So keep your eyes open for that one. It's the story of how a friend of mine and I went to Seattle to look at some high-end luxury watches. Next up, we have a watch that recently came to my attention. There's a write-up of it on Revolution Watch. So a bit ago, I was actually on the Archie Luxury live stream, which was so cool. I'm a huge fan of the Pontiff. And I love his crew, Archie, and the fans. And during the course of that discussion, this watch was brought to my attention, the Cartier Mosaic. And to be totally honest, the more I looked at this watch, the more I absolutely loved it. This looks so cool. At first glance, it's kind of crazy and funky, but yeah, the more I see it, the more I like it. And apparently that dial is actual gold in different tones of gold. That's crazy. So the Mosaic is actually a Tank Louis large, and the proportions on this sound great to me. The case size is 25.5 millimeters by 33.7 millimeters, and it's only 6.6 millimeters thick. The movement inside this watch is the Cartier caliber 1917 MC, which is a hand-wound movement. And look at that crazy case back. I like the way Cartier pieces are so super dressy, and yet they'll have elements that are almost industrial style or just kind of raw. Like in this case back, seeing the screws like that with their Tank Americaines when I tried one on. If you look at the side of the case, there are visible screws on that piece too. And the sides of the case are brushed. That's so crazy because the overall aesthetic of that watch is pure classy dressiness. So these watches retail for $13,900. And apparently, that's only $900 more than a more standard yellow gold Cartier tank. And according to Revolution Watch, these pieces are not limited editions, but they're limited production, so they may not be around for very long. I better save my pennies so I can get a Mosaic. Yeah, I just can't get over that dial. That is so cool. The next article comes to us from deployant.com, and this is a write-up of a ladies' watch in 36 millimeters. This is the Pagani Flores Tonda PF 36 millimeter. And what struck me about this watch is when it's viewed from a distance, where you wearing the watch or observers seeing it on your wrist looks really tame and minimal, but it's actually blingy, which is pretty wild. From a distance, it looks like a sleek, elegant, almost integrated bracelet-y style ladies watch with a minimalist dial. The curve of the crystal and the bezel and the case shape are just so sleek. I like the way it all just kind of curves down toward the wrist. But when you look at it a bit closer, you realize that there are diamonds around the bezel and the edges of the bracelet, as well as diamonds for the hour indices. I don't remember the last time I've seen a blinged out watch that was this tastefully done. Usually, for me personally, they just always look over the top. And I think it's cool to see a design out there for ladies who like having diamonds on their watch that's done this subtly. I mean, even when I look at the close-up photo, it doesn't look terrible. I like the way they went with a larger diamond where the lugs meet the case. It kind of adds something interesting there. And I like the way the diamonds for the hour indices look minimalist somehow. These have a butterfly clasp on them, and there's diamonds all over the clasp. But even that is done somewhat tastefully. There's a display case back on these watches, and I didn't realize that Pagani Flores was founded in 1996. For some reason I thought it was older. I agree with the author's description of this watch as being sophisticated minimalism. It totally is. So as I mentioned, the case size on these is 36 millimeters. The case thickness is 8.6 millimeters. The crystal on these is sapphire. The water resistance is 100 meters. The movement inside these is the PF770 automatic winding movement. And as you can imagine, these watches are not cheap. They retail for just under $79,000. But yeah, they're surprisingly elegant and minimal looking, even though they aren't, because of all the diamonds. Next up, we have a review from a blog to watch, and this is a review of the Christopher Ward C65 Super Compressor Elite watch. And this piece has a brilliant looking dial on it. Just look at that. The orange colors in there with the blue. Oh, that looks so good. Compressor watches always intrigue me. And this one's internal bezel is really wide. It has a white background. And then in between that, the center of the dial is mostly blue with some light blue markings, orange markings. The minutes hand is orange, the hour hand is silver. The case, of course, being Christopher Ward, is sleek and brilliant looking. And look at that touch of orange on the crown. And I still love the trident counterweight that they use on their seconds hands. I've always loved that. When I first encountered the brand, that was the one thing that really stood out about their watches. So the marks on the dial are decompression scales. And again, I really love the colorway they went with on this. Man, that just, yeah. And even the case back looks absolutely amazing. Again, here we see some more touches of orange. Yeah. And the deep sea diving helmet that's etched on there. That's cool. So the case size on these is 41 millimeters. The lug to lug is about 47 millimeters. The case height is 13.75 millimeters. The movement inside these watches is a chronometer certified movement, the Sellita SW300-1. So for these watches, you have a few different options. The Compressor Elite on a blue rubber strap is $1,685. If you want it on a bicolor Tropic strap, it is $1,675. If you want it on the bracelet, it's $1,840. And in looking at the pictures, I feel like this watch looks the best on the bracelet. So weird. Have I been corrupted? Am I now a bracelet person? Okay. The last article that I have comes to us from a blog to watch. And this is a write-up of a Yemma watch, the Yema Navigraph Slim CMM.20 limited edition watch. This watch reminds me so much of the Baltic Aquascaf. It looks absolutely beautiful. Look at that watch. That yellow looks so great. I absolutely love that seconds hand and the pop of yellow in the branding on the dial. The dark minimalist bezel on these watches looks amazing. And that crystal. The crystal was the most impressive part of the aquascaphe. I kind of miss that watch every now and then. I guess I just need to dust off the Armida. That might make me feel better. I love the straightforward case design on these watches. The minimalist hands, the dot indices. This piece really has all of the components that I love in a dive watch. And these are no-date watches. Perfect. The case size on these is 39 millimeters, and they're only 9.5 millimeters thick. Man, these watches are cool. I mean, just look at that side view. I love a good, slim dive watch. So cool. And dressing these watches up with that strap, yes. It's sad that these are limited edition. Inside these watches is the Caliber Manufacture Morteau 2.0 automatic movement. And that movement has a micro rotor. That's pretty cool. I like the finishing on that movement. Even the movement is utilitarian. So the official retail price for these watches is $1,990. I guess I need to save my pennies for this one too. So there you have it, an amazing Cartier watch that I'm just tripping on. That is so cool looking. An amazing Christopher Ward piece and a Yema piece. Things are good in the watch world tonight. Thanks for watching.